Welcome, everyone. I'm Julie Naraki, and I'm the chair of the Wildlife Society's Conservation Dog Teams Working Group. For those of you who may not be familiar with our working group, our mission is to promote the ethical and scientifically based approach of the use of dog teams in a wide range of wildlife conservation research and management applications. We hope that through the creation of more accessible resources and by serving as a connection point between conservation dog teams and the larger community of wildlife professionals, that we will widen the understanding of the role of conservation dog teams, and also hold the field to high standards of ethical use and welfare. We are a relatively new working group and are currently wrapping up year 2 of our interim status. So we still have the last few organizational milestones to meet, but we're simultaneously working hard to develop resources for our community, such as this webinar. Um, we do have an upcoming spring virtual members meeting for those interested. It's going to be held on Sunday, June 29th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. During the meeting, we'll be discussing some of our recent updates, like the launch of our Discord, an upcoming webinar series, logo development, and other working group business. Current members will receive a link through their email, but updates can also be found on our Instagram, we're TWS_conservation dog teams, or our new Discord server. You can also visit wildlife.org under the working group tabs to find out more about how to join and engage with our working group. And also feel free to reach out with questions. And with that, I'm going to introduce our wonderful webinar speaker for today, Louise Wilson. Louise is the director of Conservation Canine Consultancy, which was the first standalone freelance consultancy in the UK to specifically train for dogs for wildlife detection, logistical support, mentoring, and training. Louise brings to us a wealth of knowledge gathered from over 20 years of experience as a specialist dog handler and trainer. She has worked across multiple disciplines in the detection dog world, including drugs and explosives, cadaver, cash, and of course, conservation and wildlife monitoring. Her resume of conservation detection projects is too long to list, but includes pine marten scat, pangolin scales, live hedgehog detection, great crested newt, and back carcass detection. Dog trainers and handlers around the globe are eager to learn from Louise, and she is often found traveling around the globe to share her expertise through workshops and training seminars. Something I personally admire about Louise is that despite having this extensive knowledge and experience, she is always eager to learn more and continue her own development. Louise is also committed to upholding high standards of dog welfare and performance, and she has been a wonderful advocate for the conservation detection dog methodology. So with that, I will turn it over to Louise for our presentation today. And if you do have questions, you can type them in the Q&A box, and we will do that at the end.
Well, thank you, Julia. What a great introduction. Thank you so much. So what I'll do, I'll start my share screen, so bear with me, and then I will bear with me. This is when things go wrong. Okay, hopefully it's not going wrong.
It looks good.
So
It looks good.
good. It's a good start. So thanks again, Julie. What a lovely description. I hope I live up to the expectations that you've just put there. So yeah, I was so honoured to be asked to do this webinar, and a lot of the questions I asked Julia was, what do you want me to talk about? So with over 22 years experience of doing what I do, I kind of can talk for Britain. I always say I work like a Springer and I eat like a Labrador. So in terms of getting excited about things, I'm very much eager to talk to you about the last 22 plus years. And so what we wanted to talk about is the ethical and effective use and best practice use of detection dogs in conservation. So this is kind of to talk about everything that we've experienced over the last 22 years, and advice that I could give regarding how to best utilise dog teams in conservation. So anyone that doesn't already know me, my name's Louise Wilson. I'm founder of Conservation Canine Consultancy, the first standalone organisation that Julia mentioned, deploying dog teams. So I'm a dog handler and a dog trainer and a handler instructor. So I've got 17 years specific experience working with conservation dogs and 22 years working with all different detection dogs, such as drugs, explosives, cadaver, live body, cash, tobacco, the whole range of contraband detection. And my work with conservation, I've got different dogs trained in pine marten scat, otter, water vole, amphibian, hedgehog. We're the only UK dog team that I use for wildlife, UK wildlife crime detection. And I've also worked abroad with different projects from lynx, wolf, bear, ivory, pangolin. The list goes on, so I won't bore you with that. I'm lucky that Julie did mention that I do travel the world and I work with other dog teams. I work globally with detection dog teams to help evaluate, assess, and certify dog teams, making sure they're ready and fit for service with regards to whatever target species they're trained to find. So, my passion is obviously to work with dogs and to help dog teams, but also my long term passion is to really make better dog handlers. We already know dogs are amazing. Today, I'm not going to tell you how amazing dogs are because we know that already. It's just how we can actually be better handlers that our dogs deserve. Okay, so to start off, the popularity, let me just move a couple of things on my screen because I get to see my face and I don't want to see that. Bear with me. Okay, that's better. So the popularity, so the utilization of detection dogs in conservation has really gained significant popularity and traction over the recent years, as we're all aware. And this trend, it underscores the importance of approaching training and deployment of these dogs with a keen focus on ethical obligations and thoughtful considerations. So as this demand for detection dog increases, so does that responsibility of us, the handlers, the trainers, and organisations that are using dogs to ensure that these partnerships are grounded on the best practice and ethical standards. So, with this popularity, it really comes the risk of unprofessionalism, as some handlers may lack the necessary training and experience. The influx can lead to a dilution of standards, which I'm already seeing, unfortunately, as not all newcomers may adhere to the best practice ethical guidelines, just really due to ineffective or ill trained or ill prepared. This popularity can attract those more interested in the trend rather than the genuine expertise. So that has gained lots of popularity. I'm having people contacting me about getting involved in this industry that haven't necessarily got a obsession with their dog or even obsession with conservation. It's the trend and how good the Instagram posts become. Maintaining these high standards and professionalism becomes crucial as a specialization gains traction. So anything that gains such traction and popularity, there always becomes a risk that the professionalism is dropped a little bit. So we also all need to take responsibility for this. We all need to, whether it's organizations that are using dog teams, handlers, trainers, we all need to look and say, how can we actually make sure we remain professional? So imagine, so this is a little bit of tongue in cheek. It was something I was discussing about the use of dogs in conservation. So imagine these are the comments I receive daily. But imagine if it was applied to explosive detection work. So obviously I've got 12, 15 years experience working with explosive detection dogs and teams. So imagine if we actually applied it here. So I enjoy long walks with my dog. I want to be a bomb detection handler. My pet's really good at finding hidden toys. I was thinking of training them to detect explosives. My dog is a retired in agility due to an injury, so I thought the explosive detection would be a nice next step. My dog loves sniffing strange bags and people. Maybe he could work in airports. I got a bit of spare time at a weekend, so I was thinking of doing bomb searches as a hobby. So actually, if we change that word of bomb or explosive to wildlife conservation, we should really ask, why is it treated so differently? Conservation detection is just as skilled and high stakes and scientifically driven, and it deserves the same respect and rigor as other professionalisms. So this is one of my dogs, the picture to the right there or to your left. Hey, I don't want to do a real job. I like to sniff stuff and roll in poop. So not every dog really wants to do this. So dangers and risks and responsibilities. Sorry, I've got one of my dogs crying by my feet because it's her tea time. So conservation detection is a high stakes as explosive work, and we kind of, I do reiterate that quite a few times. It can mean that it means life or death situations that could be for endangered species, and sometimes, unfortunately, for our dogs, depending on the environments that we're placing our dogs in. Every day, conservation dogs are placed in tough, risky terrain, facing injury, disease, poison, pollution, traps, barbed wires, dangerous wild animals, vectors, broken glass, environmental hazards, and this is all to help protect and survey wildlife. So training is daily. Odor access is limited. I found it easier to get hold of training odors for explosives and drugs with licensing than it is to get hold of conservation odors. So you do need licenses and authority and procedures to actually gain certain wildlife odors. Storage is needed. The work is really intense for conservation. It shouldn't be taken lightheartedly. We get deployed in areas that are not easy to access and not even nice to survey. And don't judge it from what you see on Instagram. And I'm probably guilty myself of putting pictures up that show how amazing, how beautiful this is. But actually, during the search, it's very, very difficult and very challenging and sometimes dangerous as well. Assessments and procurements of dogs for conservation is much harder to find the correct dog than it is for other disciplines. So when I was finding dogs for, I did procurement for drugs and explosives and tobacco detection dogs. That was actually much easier than finding dogs for conservation. And I've got a house full of 12 dogs here. Most of them are operational detection conservation dogs. Some of them are retired or in training as well. But finding dogs that suit the criteria for conservation is so much harder than when I was providing dogs for other disciplines such as contraband. So this isn't gatekeeping. We do get accused of doing gatekeeping of the industry, and it's actually correcting misinformation. It's not gatekeeping. Most pet dogs aren't really built for the grit and the pressure for the working life. And really, I should say, oh, any dog can do it, because that could say more work would come my way. So I've already got enough work. I don't need to put out posts of trying to get everyone to come with a pet dog. What I do want people to look at is the responsibility is, should we be putting dogs in these situations? And should we be putting pet dogs in these situations that really the environment that we're putting them in is very, very challenging and sometimes very dangerous. So this is a picture of Rex here, and it says, ouch, oh wow, is this what I signed up for? So that's an example of the type of terrain constantly that we're in. The dog's getting scratched and cut, and the handler's getting scratched and cut, and it is very challenging, difficult environments. So professional conservation detection teams, why do standards even matter? So conservation detection is a powerful science-based method that supports species monitoring, habitat protection, and ecological research. But its success depends entirely on the skill and the training and the ethical standards of the teams involved. So that's both the humans as well as the dogs. When the work is approached casually, it really puts wildlife, the data integrity, and the animal welfare at risk, including the dog's welfare. So whether you're considering entering this field as a handler or planning to engage in detection dog teams for your project, we really all need to uphold the professionalism, and we need to all take responsibility for that. Sorry, I'm trying to move something from my screen again. Okay, okay. So, what responsibility detection work looks like? So, it's a field of expertise. It's not a pastime. So, conservation detection requires years of experience, continuous learning, adhering to the best practices in dog training, detection dog handling, and field deployment. So, it's not just about the dog handling side. It's about, can we actually manage ourselves in this kind of field environment as well, which is equally just as hard. It's no different from any other skilled professional, so that rigor matters. That really, really extreme training really does matter. Not every dog is suitable and not every handler is ready. So detection dog work is physically and mentally demanding. I always laugh that at the age of 43, I'm now doing the hardest physically demanding work than I was doing when I was in my 20s and I was doing explosive work. So that was so much easier than the work I was doing now. Dogs must be carefully selected, trained, and assessed prior to either being trained for this type of work. So, forcing ill prepared, unsuitable, unassessed, or even unfit dogs into this field is not only ineffective from a data point of view, it's really, really unethical. It must uphold scientific legitimacy. So the work that we do and the detection teams contribute to ecological research and conservation science. So this data collection must be repeatable, defensible, and conducted under consistent and validated protocols. So any less risks, anything let anything less, sorry, risk undermining the entire project. Sorry, I've got something in my screen, so I miss out the last couple of words. So the risk of low standards, it has a ripple effect outwards to lots of other things. When we underqualified teams or untested dog teams are deployed, our dog teams that don't realise they're not ready for that particular work, the wildlife can be harmed and disturbed. Dogs may experience stress or failure for the project. Data becomes unreliable or unusable. Stakeholders lose confidence in the method. So that's the biggest thing, is people stop trusting the use of dogs in conservation. And then that will affect long-term funding, and the support declines within the projects and the use of dogs. So really, upholding professionalism and ethics in conservation dog work isn't gatekeeping, it's safeguarding wildlife, science and dog welfare. So too often conservation detection work is treated as a hobby or a softer version of professional detection work. This is something I get daily. When I was doing my explosives and drugs and cash work, I never had anyone say, oh, my pet's really good at scent work, maybe I could do this. But in the conservation world, this is what I get all the time. And I love the enthusiasm that people are wanting to get involved in. I mean, that is absolutely wonderful. But we have to make sure people realise it's just as demanding as detection dog searches for explosives and bombs. Sorry, my dog's decided to drink loads of water. So framing this work as a hobby, whether that's intentional or not, really has damaging consequences. So it undermines credibility by making rigorous scientific work appear casual or even amateur. It confuses end users who may not understand the difference between trained professional teams and unqualified scent enthusiasts. It jeopardizes project outcomes and funding by reducing trust in detection dog reliability. It weakens welfare standards, especially if handlers use aversive tools or they skip the essential training and dog assessment. So it lowers the bar for the entire sector, encouraging shortcuts and reducing accountability. So we all have the responsibility in this, whether we're training, whether we're handling, whether we're utilising dog teams. So we need to make sure we ensure dog teams are trained, certified for target species and environments. They're demonstrated operational readiness through dog's wagging a tail, readiness through independent assessments, the following ethical and welfare guidelines, including force-free methods, using structured protocols and methodologies to support data integrity. So we all need to be responsible for this, and also need to make sure we don't spread misinformation, and make sure people that are wanting to go into this field with their dog, sorry, I got flying, with their dog, is to actually realise the stress and the pressures that might be put on them as a handler and their dog as well. So the key message really trying to talk about is referring to conservation detection work as a pet work or casual hobby really undermines the professional credibility, the ethical standards, and the scientific legitimacy. So I've had situations myself where clients have come to me and said, we want to do voluntary dog teams on a particular project. And I'm like, okay, I'm not keen on the idea of voluntary or the word voluntary. One, in conservation, everyone thinks everything should be voluntary, and that doesn't work. That's not fair. But also, I kind of said we need skilled individuals for certain projects. So I said, instead of voluntary, we need to go pro bono. So the handlers are all absolutely trained and they're going to offer some of their spare time to do this particular project. So we also need to be aware of the words that we use in certain circumstances. So it's not just for fun, it's skilled, structured, high stake conservation tool that demands respect, oversight and professionalism. And what I mean for just for fun, it's not fun at all, if I'm completely honest with you. A lot of the surveys that I go on, I'm not having fun. It's very difficult, it's very challenging. Later on when I look at the pictures and I realise what how amazing my dog is and the environments that we're in, but really at the time it's not fun. And I corrected someone recently who was talking about, I just want to go out and have fun with my dog, and I said, okay, using your dog operationally, working in a pressurized situation, it doesn't become fun anymore. It's professional, it's work. Creating it casually is more discouraging, and it's also disrespectful to the trained professionals, both humans and canines, who uphold the highest standards. It also puts wildlife data integrity and ecosystem protection at risk. When done properly, conservation detection dogs is a powerful asset to science. However, when done poorly, it really becomes a liability. So let's all really protect the integrity of this field. We all have to do this together. So I'll get off my high horse now and discuss some questions that we really must ask ourselves. So, when going into this industry with utilising dogs, we need to look at what is our motivation. Are we training dogs for conservation for a particular project to genuinely contribute to the environmental preservation? Or are there other motives like personal gain, media, recognition? Is it really important to it is really important to prioritize the welfare of the dogs and the conservation goals over any other individual interest. So we need to make sure the aim of that and the motivation is that conservation goal and the welfare of the dog. The suitability of the dog. Are we really selecting the right breed and the individual dog for that specific task and that particular project? Different breeds have different strengths, and not all dogs are suited to every type of work. So, this is one thing I deal with quite regularly. Someone comes to me with a dog and says, I've got this project this dog has to do, and I might assess the dog and say that dog isn't right for that project. So from my point of view, I've got 12 rescue dogs, so I'm like, there'll be a dog in rescue that you can utilize and maybe find the right one for this particular job. But sometimes we try and mold the dog that doesn't really suit that job into that role. And so this is what we really need to question ourselves. Is it right for like one dog to be used for every single role, or should you actually have multi dogs? I'm not saying you need to be as crazy as me with 12 dogs living in the house of like high drive dogs, but we really need to consider, should that one dog be doing every single project under the sun, and is that fair and ethical for the dog as well? Project relevance. So, is the conservation project aligned with the dog's skills and the overall goals of conservation? So, we need to make sure that project is scientifically sound, necessary, and the dog's involvement will really genuinely benefit the conservation efforts. So, what is the impact of using a dog for that project? Sometimes money wants to get pushed on a project, oh, we'll use a dog, but I've many a times over the last 17 years said to people or said to clients that I don't think the function of putting a dog in that project is beneficial for the ultimate aim and impact of the conservation, especially when money in conservation is so limited. We have to really make sure that the use of a dog in a project is really, really viable and really needed as well. Training methods. Are we using humane, effective training methods that respect the dog's well-being? The training approach should be positive, reinforcing desirable behaviours rather than using aversive techniques. So say no to e-collar use. If you are training dogs that you need to get an electric collar on so they don't chase animals, but that's a dog you're looking at for conservation, instantly you're looking at the wrong dog. Um, it's a definite no-go for e-collar use in our organisation and over here in the UK. But I know they get widely used, but sometimes that is simply because the wrong dog has been picked for the role. So make sure you're actually picking the right dog so you can actually utilise positive reinforcement methods. Long-term impact. So what are the long-term implications and involvement of dogs in the conservation work? Should we consider how the project affects the dog, the ecosystem, and the communities involved? So what is the long-term goal? The dog used for data collection, but how can that dog actually help with the communities, with the education, other types of ways that the dog project can actually help with furthering the conservation impact for that particular role? Also, training the dog on a particular odor. Are we considering where that dog might go after the first project? I don't use dogs for one project and then get rid of them and try and rehome them for another one. I utilize my dogs consistently. So if I train my dog on one target odor, will that target odor potentially compromise a future project? So we really have to have a think about what odors we're training our dogs on as well. So collaboration, are we collaborating with the species experts, conservationists, ecologists, dog trainers, ensuring a holistic approach? So their interdisciplinary cooperation can really enhance the effectiveness and sustainability of conservation efforts. So making sure we always kind of say, you're not an island as a dog team. You need to be a village. You need to work with all these different organisations and all these different people to not only support you and your dog for safety and welfare, but also to support the conservation initiative. By critically evaluating these aspects, we can really ensure that our efforts in training dogs for conservation is responsible, ethical, and impactful. Is it really going to make a difference? So, tailoring training to individual dogs. So, one of the foremost principles of really good, effective detection dog training is the necessity and ability to use methods for the individual dog's characters, behaviors, needs, and preferences. A dog-centered approach is vital, optimizing training outcomes, ensuring that dogs are not only effective in the role, but also content and engaged. So making sure we know dogs can do it, but making sure they're actually content, engaged, and happy when they're doing it is another ball game entirely. By considering each dog's unique traits, handlers can create a more supportive training environment that fosters success, and each dog to be assessed for its strengths and abilities before a project is even picked for that individual dog. So that's what I like to dog. Like to do. I like to assess a dog and look at what project or what type of project I would apply that dog to. It's very difficult when someone comes in with a very rigid project and a dog, and that dog doesn't suit it. So, prescriptive training plan, it's really essential for several reasons. So, individual needs. So, each dog has unique characteristic. It has their own temperament, they have certain drives, and they also have their own learning styles. So, if we address these, it really optimizes the training effectiveness. So, you can train the dogs better if you actually consider all these aspects. The motivation, what is the dog's motivation? You're likely to succeed when training aligns with their natural instincts and motivations. So, understanding what drives a specific dog allows trainers to find the best role suited to the dog. Stress reduction, that's really important that handlers and trainers really understand how you can help reduce stress in your working dog. A dog centered approach helps minimize the stress, the frustration, and anxiety during training and operations, leading to a more positive learning environment, enhancing performance and retention. We also need to make sure when we're operational, we're able to facilitate the dog to self regulate with over arousal and stress as well. And behavioural understanding. So, a focus on the dog behaviour and well-being promotes a healthier learning environment for you and the dog. Sorry, my dog's crying for her tea. Um, Consistency in communication. So, prescriptive plans foster better communication between the handler and the dog, ensuring the connections are clear and consistent, which is crucial for detection dogs. So, we need to make sure how you communicate with your dog and how your dog communicates with you is really, really clear. Long-term success. So, by building this strong bond, relationship, solid trust, and understanding through this dog-centered approach, trainers and handlers can really ensure the dogs remain engaged and effective. So, you need such a certain bond with your dog for conservation because of the environments that you're placing the dog in, because the fact that usually you're not necessarily on top of each other. The dog might be off lead at a distance or might be on a long lead far away from you, but you still need to have a really strong, solid bond. But you need to make sure that dog remains engaged with you and the task and the job throughout all the hours of the work that the dog's doing or all the length of the project. Adaptability. So, a bespoke plan allows for flexibility, enabling trainers to adjust methods based on the dog's progress. So, I never give a training plan of that's what you're going to do in the next 4 weeks because it depends on what the dog does every single week. Sometimes you can progress the dog a bit quicker. Sometimes you need to go over the basic foundations again and kind of really cement those. So, making sure you're quite dynamic with your training plan and where your working relationship really, really helps create a really effective dog team. A dog-centered bespoke training plan can enhance effectiveness, which promotes well-being and fosters a positive relationship. I can't speak between your dog and handler. So let me see if I can move this, which is now in my way. Sorry, everything keeps getting in my way. The role of handlers. So we talk a lot about dogs and what type of characteristics we look for in dogs, but one really, really, really important thing is the recognition that handlers require extensive, lengthy, empathetic training. So the success of a detection dog team, it relies really purely on the handler's ability. A dog can only be as good as a dog handler allows it to be. So the handler needs to understand dog behavior, communication cues, handling techniques, experience in real life deployment, potential risks in the environment, scent picture and odor movement in different environments, project and target species, and so much more. That deep comprehension. Sorry, something's going to be in my way again. I love the way this is in my way. Bear with me. A deep comprehension of these intricacies allow handlers to build a strong partnership with their dog, which is really essential for this detection dog work. So using detections in any role, it's really important that a handler has really good training. Oops, this is where it all goes wrong, 'cause now it won't move along. Dog handlers should undergo lengthy training for several different reasons. So, when we talk about lengthy training, we just need to make sure that handler has a really in depth knowledge of the dog that it's working with and the projects that it's working with in the environments that it's working in. So, understanding detection dog behavior, in depth training helps handlers learn to interpret the canine body language behavior, which is crucial for recognizing signs of stress, excitement, distractions, as well as target odor. So, the environment that we work in is not black or white, it's not drugs in that bag and no drugs in that bag. With environmental wildlife searches, the animal has normally been present, been in the area at one point, or not in the area anymore. So it's lots of grey areas. The dog isn't just trying to find one odor; it's actually being trained to trained to ignore millions of odors. So that's so much more harder than just finding one target odor. Effective communication. So, lengthy training ensures that the handlers develop skills to communicate effectively with their dogs and positive reinforcement methods to promote that learning and success. And building that trust and bond. So, that strong relationship between the handler and the dog is essential for effective teamwork. You need to know you can trust your dog, and your dog needs to know they can trust you. Specialized knowledge. So, detection work requires specific knowledge such as scent recognition, search systems, primary alerts of your dog, as well as various detection understanding. So, that comprehensive training really equips the handler with the skill necessary for the particular field. And that changes depending on the environment that you're working in. Problem solving. So, whether it's in training or operational, the handler needs to adapt to their troubleshooting issues that arise. They tend to arise during an operational search. So, you have to be able to have a toolbox full of skill and training and ability and techniques to help with the dog whilst you're actually operational. Lengthy training provides them with strategies to address challenges effectively and accurately. Handlers must understand how to manage their dogs in potential dangerous or stressful situation, ensuring the safety of both the dogs and of others. So you normally get deployed in areas where it's hard to survey, difficult to access. So therefore, it's already probably an unsafe environment to start with. And if you've got a dog, whether it's on the lead or off the lead, you need to be responsible for that dog's safety. So, the ethical considerations, that professional training emphasizes humane and ethical handling practices. So, the knowledge of well-being of the target species as well is really important, as well as all the other animals that are in that environment. So, as we might be looking for a target species, however, we've got lots of non-target species in that environment that we also are responsible for. Regulatory standards. So, developing and upholding best practice standards for conservation detection dogs helps ensure end users, so the people that want to use dog teams, understand what defines a professional team. Overall, this lengthy training is really crucial to developing the skills, knowledge, and confidence needed to do handlers to work effectively in their role. So, what we really need to do is deconstruct detection. So, there's lots of aspects we need to look at. So, breed, search style, practical application, dog's natural range, dog's physicality, character, indication style. So, let's go through because I know my time is running out. Breed search style. So when we're looking at the dogs, we need to look at that general breed search style and how that dog encounters its environment already. Are we trying to teach one dog? Are we trying to teach a Labrador to be a Springer? Are we trying to teach a Springer to be a Labrador? Sometimes instantly certain breeds have certain search styles, so let's utilize that where we can. A dog's physicality. Is the dog's size accurate for the actual project requirement? Could the dog be too big or even too small for the project goals? Project considerations, such as factors like intended use of dogs, can influence training goals. So, considering these elements to ensure the training is relevant and applicable for the dog's future tasks. So, if you're going to train your dog on a invasive, after that, when you try and train your dog on endangered species, and you might have an overlap of an issue because what I call it action on a find, when you find an invasive, you action on a find of that is completely different of when you find endangered species. So when we do our surveys, we're looking for endangered species. That means we want to protect the environment as soon as we confirm that species is there. If that dog is overlapping with invasive species detection, it's different action on a find. If there's invasives there, you normally want to come in and get rid of and remove those invasives. So that would affect the habitat and the environment for your endangered species. So really to think about the future tasks and the future roles and the future target odors you want to train your dog on. Practical application, knowing how your dog will be used in the real world scenario allows trainers to focus on relevant skills and scenarios. So when I speak to clients, I always say, what is the practical application of that? Or is it required? So someone once years ago when I was living in South Africa said about training dogs for vulture detection on wind turbine sites, and I kind of said, I don't think we need a dog to find vultures because the sites that they were on is very quite open, so no hidden areas, and also vultures are very big. So we kind of have to look, would it be worth risking a dog and also the finances of putting a dog in that certain circumstances when it can be actually done by a human surveyor? Dog character. So each dog has its unique personality and temperament. So we have to recognize these traits to help with the project we need to ensure a positive and productive learning environment. So don't go against the dog's natural character, actually utilize it. And handler quality. So the handler's experience, communication style, training philosophy really play a crucial role in a dog's success. So matching a dog with a handler who can effectively leverage the dog's strengths is key in achieving optimum performance in a project. Dogs' natural range. So dogs have natural range as well. So what are they comfortable? I always say they have a invisible umbilical cord between you and your dog. So is that quite a distant one, or is the dog stay close? If you've got a project where your dog needs to be away from you and you're trying to train your dog who loves just to be around you, I always say it's just not the right dog. Why not get that dog that enjoys to be further away from you, spending all that energy trying to change the dog's natural character when actually, I'm not saying just go and get another dog for a rescue, but this is why I've got 12 dogs. When a project comes in and we need a dog to stay close to us, work on a cryptic odor, I can look at which dog I have that suits that particular role. I'm not trying to pigeonhole every dog into an area. We have to make sure the dog is fit for the best job with the correct dog. Emotional response to odor. So that's really important. Not every dog likes every odor. And so certain odors like large carnivore odor can be quite scary for dogs, innate response to it. And so we need to look at how we're going to train that dog, or even should we train that dog if their initial response is dislike, I don't want to go near that. Also, equally, you have dogs that really love odors a bit too much. And so instead of trying to stop that dog from picking up that bird carcass because he's come from a gun dog breeder or he's a rescue dog and he's going to be obsessed with picking it up, just don't use that dog for that project. It feels unfair to try and mold that dog into an area that he just doesn't fit in very well. An indication style. So different disciplines may require specific indication behavior. So understanding the desired indication style helps trainers focus on teaching the appropriate behaviors for successful detection and looking at the reasons for indication styles that you might need. And also realizing when you're out in the environment and you've got the habitat, the terrain, the challenges, sometimes indications that you might train in a training setup might not always be applicable in the operational deployment. So making sure you have really good skills in reading your dog is vital. So to go over, is it safe? Is it ethical? What you're doing with your dog, is it safe? Is it ethical? Welfare and living conditions. So dogs are working dogs in the day. They're loving doing all that. At night, where are they sleeping? Where are they living? What is their living conditions? I'm not saying be crazy like me to have 12 high drive dogs living in your house because you compromise a lot of your sanity to do that. But I'm saying, are they living the best life? We have to really consider the welfare. Have they got access to social aspect of socializing with other dogs, socializing with other people, having activities that are not just related to the work? Realistic project expectations. What is the aim of the project, and is the dog going to fulfill that aim, or is there any other way we can make sure the aims are fulfilled? And also sometimes unrealistic project expectations and for the dog and the handler. Welfare of the target. Have we really considered the welfare of the target and also welfare of the non-target in that environment? Are we affecting that? How are we actually having an effect on the whole environment? Has other search methods been applied? I say this to a lot of clients that contact me. Has there been any other survey technique used before applying dogs? And sometimes there hasn't. So I'm like, let's look at all the other methods before you go down that route of deploying a dog, especially if you're deploying a dog in very, very dangerous, damaging, challenging environments. Practical, safe application for the dog team's deployment. So we have to look, is it safe for the dog teams, the handler and the dog? So let's just stop there. So let's look at training ethics. So just because a dog can doesn't mean dog should. So what I mean by that, just because like my dog, I could say I've got plenty springers. They would love to be out on a wind turbine site for 6 months solid, working every day. However, they would not be effective and efficient. The nasal fatigue kicks in. They look like they're doing the work. They're not doing the work. And also it's really not ethical to do that. We could say a human can work 3 months in a row every single day. That's no problem, but it doesn't mean they should. And we also, especially in this climate that we're in at the moment, especially in the UK, people are talking about reducing working weeks. Um, and then we're talking about increasing working days for dogs. Really, we need to consider, is it fair to be putting the dogs in the situation in the first place? So force-free ethical training methods only to be used. So are we using the most force-free ethical methods with our conservation dogs? Is it fair to push a dog to do something even if it doesn't, even if it's done positively? And what I mean by that, if your dog really doesn't like to go into the grass and sniff through grass, is it fair to even look at that dog for a conservation project that requires its nose to be in the grass 90% of the time? Or even though you're doing it positively, training the dog positively, is it even fair to do that? It's like if someone said to me, I'm going to reinforce you to like the dentist. I don't like the dentist. I don't want to like the dentist. So is there an even point of doing that? How does the dog feel? So look at the natural emotional response, the natural searchability, the natural likes and dislikes. What is the dog's emotional feelings at the time of searching and operational? Don't just think about what you're doing with your 2-year-old dog now. Think about the effect that the decisions will shape your 12-year-old dog's welfare in the future. So I'm very, very aware of that. I've got dogs ranging from, let's say, she's 8 months old and up to 15 years old. I am very aware of what I do with my young dogs and the effect that has on the later years. So we really need to be responsible for that. Using aversive training methods that harm our working canine partners in the name of species conservation is unethical. So concerns with short courses. So with this growing popularity, there's a growing popularity of short courses, whether that's online or in person, which carries a tangible risk that these programs may compromise the efficiency and professionalism of detection dog teams. So teams must be mentored by individuals to have adequate field knowledge to ensure that they meet the demands of their tasks effectively. Short courses can give a false sense of competency. So this is the issue, which emphasizes surface level knowledge over real world scenarios. This can lead to people being unprepared for practical challenges, risking safety for themselves, their dogs and the wildlife. So the effective training should balance theory, hands-on experience, expert shadowing, field work and ongoing mentoring. So true readiness comes from bridging the gap between knowing and doing. So something we must all support. So handler training. So I know I've got just a couple of minutes before questions and answers. So expect lengthy, in-depth training, mentoring and shadowing. Use experienced instructors that are used to wildlife detection experience work. Open to learning holistic approaches and consider your dog as an individual being. Look at handling techniques like lead stroking, T-touch techniques and massage. Realize dogs are sentient beings that experience feelings. So how are the dog feeling? This is where people think I'm a bit crazy, but we need to think about the dog's emotional state. Manage dogs' arousal using play, touch and licking mats if you aren't already doing so. Aware of body language, displacement behavior from dogs, and displacement behavior from dogs in stressful situations can actually involve them looking like they're really, really smelling really intently. It actually can be displacement behavior. And make sure your dog knows he can trust you. I'm going to jump past this one welfare approach. So it's just making sure that we foster the approach. It's looking at our dog, ourselves as a handler, the environment that we're working on, and the communities. And to wrap up, so we all know the Dunning-Kruger effect, and I think we're all guilty of being at this on this graph at some point, and especially in the beginning of this graph. So unfortunately, the Dunning-Kruger effect reveals how individuals with limited experience tend to overestimate their skill and knowledge due to the unawareness of what they don't know. And this is what keeps me up at night. I already know lots of things I don't know, and that's up to 22 years. And I'm always like, oh my goodness, at 22 years of doing this, there's so much I still don't know. And it kind of keeps me up at night realizing, but we have to make sure that where limited knowledge leads to overconfidence, this undermines the legitimacy of detection dogs in conservation and erodes the trust in this specialist field. So the effective ethical use of detection dogs requires a holistic approach that priorities dog welfare. So how does this affect the industry? So misinformation, inadequate training spreads false confidence and poor practices, erosion of trust, stakeholders lose faith in dog assisted methods after lack of success, resource waste, time, funding, effort are diverted from effective strategies that can help with conservation, animal welfare risks, poor handling and training can harm dogs and undermine ethics, and long-term damage, loss of credibility may hinder future support of conservation dog use, which is already what I'm seeing. It's essential that all, whether practitioners, field assistants, promoters, influencers, trainers, or end users, really all take responsibility for upholding the highest ethical professional standards. And to finish off, even though I'm a couple of minutes over, I'm sorry, Julia, the effective and ethical use of detection dogs in conservation and wildlife crime requires a really holistic approach that prioritises the well-being of dogs, the competency of the handlers, and the integrity of the training process. So to be honest about project needs, ensuring adequate training and mentorship, and confirming alignments between project requirements and dog capabilities, we can really foster responsible and impactful use of detection dogs. So as we advance in this field, we all need to commit to upholding the highest ethical standards in our work with these remarkable animals, whether that's your target or your dog. So is there any questions? Sorry, I overran a little bit, Julia.
Oh, you're fine, Louise. Feel free to continue to type your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Try to cluster a few. The first, I guess, grouping we kind of have is in regards to dog selection, and a couple people want to know, is there specific breeds that can be used for this purpose, or can any dog breed? Somebody specifically was asking about Malinois. So could you speak a little bit briefly? I know there's a lot
Yeah.
to cover, but
No,
about
it is. It's
breeds.
true. It's all the questions that we all ask regarding breeds. I think with regards to breeds, I don't think there's only a certain particular dogs that can do this work. I think you don't want to be a breedist and judge a dog by its breed. In the UK, one of the issues is trying to find a dog from a rescue. I know I can go to a Springer Spaniel rescue and pick up a Springer or a Cocker that will probably have the drive that I want. It'll be a crazy dog that isn't going to make a good pet dog. That as long as it doesn't chase animals and have issues like that, then I can utilize for conservation. However, when we're looking at other dogs, if we're looking at hunting dogs or hounds, you have got that genetics that has to play a little bit of a role in it. And so it's hard when you say, right, oh, my dog's jumping up at me. It's hard to look at which dog to go for, which breed to go for. And I don't really judge it like that. I tend to look at dogs that are toy motivated, and then it depends on what age you get it. Regarding one thing you want to make sure it doesn't do is chase animals. That's really, really important. But also the conservation dogs, I feel like they need to be really environmentally sound and really happy to go in the muddy water and really happy to go through thick bushes and thorns. I love my Labradors and Springers, but that's a personal preference because 22, 23 years working with them. I've also got a Malinois that I use and she uses for my biosecurity work. But we have an issue with that with public perception, especially here in the UK. If I'm getting a big Malinois out of a van after she's making the van rock from barking, and I'm going to say she's going to help save all these cute endangered species, the public perception straight away, they're questioning that. So here we have a very issue of what does the dog look like. So Rexy Poo here is a lovely, beautiful little dog. He was a rescue dog at 12 weeks old with a bite history. And obviously at 12 weeks old, you haven't got a bite history, darling. So we got him and we trained it. But he is very visually nice looking. So the public perception, we haven't got that risk. So it's really bad that we need to look at that. It's like I love Staffordshire Bull Terriers. That's what I grew up with, but there's no way I could apply a Staffordshire Bull Terrier to this industry in the UK because I am already trying to fight for the use of dogs in conservation. If I'm then trying to bring along a Malinois and a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, I've already got other bridges and barriers that I need to climb across. So finding the right dog, I tend to have an assessment form that when I'm looking or assessing dogs, I always look at them for 2 to 3 weeks if I'm getting from a rescue. And I'm looking at them in terms of engagement with the handler and how well they play. I don't want a dog that's absolutely obsessed with its ball, where it's crying and it's in a bad emotional state, but I want engagement, I want teamwork. But it's so hard to give you an exact of what I look for. This is why the conservation dogs, to find the right conservation dog is so much harder than contraband detection.
Great. Kind of piggybacking off what you just said, is there any type of certification for conservation dogs? And just how can you evaluate if you're ready or not?
Yeah, no, this is one of the hardest things. As you know, I'm not sure what it's like in the States, but I know in here in the UK, the dog industry is completely unregulated. They've only just started regulating the use of explosive dog teams, and that's after what, 40, 50 years of using explosive dog teams. And that is it's a very costly thing to have done as well. And so with regards to certification, I think that the only organization that do it is over in New Zealand, and the government agencies can certify dog teams. But I think one thing we need to kind of push is make sure that you have certification. So I travel and do certification of dog teams, but what that means, I don't really like the word certification. I go and evaluate dog teams to check that they and their handler are ready for the deployment of the project that's in hand. When we do umbrella certifications, that's one project isn't relatable to another project to another project. So with regards to what certification we go to, that's very hard, but just make sure you get an external assessor to come out and assess a dog team and given the project goals. So, for example, the dog is searching for water vole latrines in a habitat, which a water vole habitat, for a certain length of time to make sure not only that dog can do an ID lineup, because from my point of view, a lineup is really not representative of a dog being operational, but is actually environmentally can that dog do that task, and also not just for a 5 minute task, is for a long day. So this is what we're trying to do, is trying to legitimize the industry by creating more evaluations and more ways of dog teams to be assessed. But you also get a point where if one person starts doing it, or one organization, it becomes monopolized. And so I always say to people, just reach out to other organizations and even see if there's guidelines that they have and you want to meet the guidelines. So New Zealand Conservation Dog Section, reach out to them, ask what their guidelines are, and trying to make sure you reach that expectation of that. We created some guidelines for the use of dogs in conservation in the UK for great crested newts. This was specific for great crested newts, and they're on the website, the addc.org, and I can give that to Julia to send out if need be. And we're in the process of creating some guidelines for the use of conservation dogs, and we have got different people involved in that, worldwide dog teams. But this is the hard thing, because the work we do here in the UK is so different to what you do out over there. But it's trying to have some guidelines from the welfare point of view, which is really, really key, is making sure just because our dog can do it, it doesn't mean our dog should do it.
Great. Um, Here's another, I guess, big question, but try to condense. As an end user, this person's wondering how they can do a better job of selecting for and screening for qualified teams. And they have the
Yeah.
second part, but I'll let you answer the
Yeah, no,
first part first.
that's one of the key things we're trying to do at the moment, is reach out to end users, because from years of me saying use dogs, use dogs, use dogs, now I'm telling people don't use dogs, don't use dogs, and they're like, well, how do we do that? It's like, okay, how would you look for a legitimate, qualified, any other aspect of your research team? You would make sure you get references, you'd make sure they have operational experience, they've been trained by a relevant person who's been involved with wildlife detection, they've actually been deployed, they've had success, they've had external assessment. So this is hard because of the industry generally. It's all very, very, very what's the word I'm looking for? Foggy of knowing what to do. We have got that guidelines on the ADD site, and that's regarding Great Crested Newts. However, there's sections in that booklet that actually does say this is what you should look for from a dog team, and so that kind of helps. But this is one thing we all want to put together, is what should people look for? And maybe, Julia, this is something we could do in the working dog group, is to help facilitate end users of what they should look like, because if you don't know, you're not going to know. But I always say make sure you've got relevant references and length of time of that dog training, and prior assessments. Like, dogs should be assessed before they're trained, to make sure it was even relevant for the project before.
Yeah, definitely. That is a major goal of the working group, is just to increase communication and figure out, help people ask the correct questions, and because they might not know the correct questions to ask in the first place.
Exactly.
Um, and this individual also was asking about how they should differentiate between opportunistic surveys, potentially where a pet dog helps, and standardized working dog efforts.
Yeah, this is the hard thing. So it all depends on your project aim. But as soon as, if we're talking about pet dogs from scent work, who's good with the nose, usually the success isn't as good as the operational dog teams. And I know it always comes down to funding, and this is one of the big things with conservation generally. But if you kind of was like, right, we're going to do a community project, and obviously there is some community projects worldwide that are using local dogs and pet dogs that do work, but you have to look at what happens if it goes wrong. So what happens if you got the risk to the species, whether it's an endangered species, if it's an invasive species, what is the risk of those untrained dog teams then spreading the invasive or facilitating the invasive movement? So if the person that's messaging wants to email me, I can give him a big spiel of all the things that go through my head, because even though we want people to say yes, definitely use dogs, but on the use of using pet dogs, there becomes a lot of risk. And also, when I was being asked to use pet dogs for a project, I kind of said, okay, these pet dogs to use on this project, that would then mean that them dogs, anytime they're in an environment where this particular species is, that dog has to be on a lead continuously. So a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't realize that one. Well, yeah, because we can't risk that dog running into this environment and trying to find their target species. And they said, oh, and I was like, well, that is the thing, especially if you work on the limbic, response from the dog. The dog loves the odor. It's going to go for the odor whenever it wants. It's not just going to go for odor when it's got the harness and the working harness on. So it has an impact on the working dog or the pet dog, even when it's not working. So it depends on what project it is regarding whether the community dog teams can help, or whether they should actually go for professional dog teams.
It, I think we have maybe time to squeak in one more question, even though there's lots more great ones. But this person is permitted to use pointing dogs for bird banding and other avian research. And they have run into some challenges of being permitted in one state, and, but they also work on federal land, state land. And do you have any advice on how to talk about the use of conservation dogs with government agencies so that they're more open to allowing us to work on?
Yes. Well, I know you got it crazy over there with all the state changes, but I live in Wales and I work in England and I've worked in Scotland, and we have, in a way, different requirements in different areas like that. So all I can say is, when you have success in one area, that success and that data and that tangible evidence that you've got there, that is going to be your biggest way of speaking to your next government agent who are saying, no, they don't want you on their land, but say, this is what we're able to do. And it depends who you're speaking to. Some people are only bothered about how much money you have saved. Some people don't care how many animals you've saved, but they might want to know how much money you have saved. So look at it of who you're speaking to and how you're going to word what you're going to word. But it always comes from evidence. So that's why I spent years trying to get a portfolio together of the success before I can then put that to somebody else for another success. And that's when it starts kind of snowballing. But it comes from, if you have had success with appointing dogs in one state, is gather all that data together, how much money you've saved people, how much time you've saved, and then pass that along. And also, once again, get those references from those other experts that aren't dog people, the other experts, because when we we talk about dogs and we just sound like we're crazy dog lovers, we actually need to do it from a non-dog person's point of view so they can support it, because that sometimes gives it legitimacy as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Louise. It's been a pleasure to have you, and I know you have so much more to share. So
I
we
could
might have
talk
to.
forever. Yeah.
I know. And there are some more great questions, but I guess this will just be a pitch for the working group.
Yep.
This is the platform of the working group is trying to connect people so they can find the professionals that know these answers. And we just launched our Discord group. Luis is in our Discord group. So if you're in our working group and join, you can go have conversations there and get her perspective as well as the perspective of other folks. So I guess that's my final pitch. But yeah, so thanks so much, Louise, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated and quite honoured that I got asked. So thanks once again.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.